Do you know the Uncanny Valley effect? This fear comes from ancient times, when our ancestors had seen this kind of thing. They are similar to humans, but different from humans. Now they are hiding in modern society. Perhaps they are our relatives and friends. The question is how to distinguish them. 1 million years ago, humans had just learned to make fire, ending the days of eating raw meat and drinking blood. In the evening, a group of apes returned to the cave with their prey and made a fire. At this time, another person walked in from outside the cave. His face was hidden in the darkness, and others could not see it clearly. The people in the cave did not know one thing. This person who came in was not their own kind at all. A clever ape man raised a torch and tentatively approached the newcomer, examining his entire body. Yes, he looked like the same kind as himself, but the clever ape man always felt something was wrong. He asked the man in a mumbling voice, "I haven't seen you before." The man smiled. "I'm just passing by and want to sleep." Humans are social animals, and this request was agreed to by the people in the cave. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, the man holding the torch could not fall asleep. He kept thinking about one question. What's wrong with this person who came in? 1 nose, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs. Everything is normal, and there is no extra tail or wings. The clever ape man was puzzled at the moment. He always felt that there was a problem. He secretly glanced at the person who came to stay overnight, and the person was sleeping soundly at the moment. In the second half of the night, he also fell into a deep sleep and had a dream. In the dream, he saw the person who had stayed with him again. There were only the 2 of them in the dream. He was a little scared and called on the gods in heaven to bless him. The man seemed to see through his thoughts and said, "Sure, even God doesn't know of my existence." The 2 of them were getting closer and closer. He looked across at them, trembling all over, and finally remembered what was wrong. Then he woke up and ran out of the cave like a madman, screaming miserably, "This is horrible. I'm going to tell everyone this secret." From then on, the human fear gene of that thing has been passed down, and from this, a term has also been derived in modern society, the Uncanny Valley effect. Click. At this moment in my study, my cousin Ava typed the last word on the computer and looked up at me. So, what happened next? What secret did that clever ape man discover? I asked curiously. My cousin closed her computer, picked up the coffee beside her, and drank it while mumbling. This is a story I just wrote. I'm not sure what the secret is. I was disappointed to hear her answer. What the hell? I was so engrossed in reading this just now, waiting for you to write down the answer, but you, the original author, actually said you didn't know either. My cousin looked at me and said, "Daniel, you have a lot of ideas in your head. Can you help me figure out how to design this secret?" I was speechless and said, "What? You are a horror novel writer, and you come to me for answers." My cousin patted my shoulder nonchalantly and said, "This is called brainstorming." My original design was to write the passing ape man as a monster, but that would be a bit cliched, and there would be no sense of suspense. Since your novel is based on the Uncanny Valley, you definitely can't describe it as a monster. As I said that, I stood up and took a book from the bookshelf. This book is a foreign work, which mainly writes about the works of famous horror writers around the world, and also includes some theoretical analysis on horror. After finding a certain page, I handed the book to my cousin, sat down again, and said, "You see, the earliest Uncanny Valley theory was about robots and non-human objects." My cousin curled her lips and said, "I've known this basic theory for a long time." Although she said this, she still stared at the book patiently and read it. I couldn't help but laugh and said, "So, at the beginning, your story introduction is about ancient apes. So robots are impossible. That's illogical and too distracting." My cousin didn't even raise her head and said, "That's right. That's why I define this thing from the beginning as something that looks the same as humans, but has a fatal flaw. Once humans discover this flaw, they will recognize it. I became interested. It's pretty good. So what's the flaw? My cousin said unhappily. Didn't I just say that? I haven't thought about it yet. Seeing that my cousin was still deep in thought, I crossed my legs and jokingly asked, could it be Martians? Lizard men? Or underground people? Go away. My cousin waved her hands. What a boring setting. After a while, my cousin pointed at the computer and said, but I'll give that thing a name first. What's your name? We are human beings, so they are called pseudo-humans. Oh my. I leaned back on the sofa when I heard the name. Why be so casual? Besides, if some readers have poor hearing, they might hear something shocking, which would be too shocking. My cousin raised her head with a disdainful gesture and continued reading the book. I suddenly thought of a scene in the novel and asked curiously, Cousin, why did the smart ape man feel something was wrong when he first saw the fake man? She looked at me deeply, and suddenly her expression became serious. She asked a strange question. Daniel, do you feel scared when you look at me? I was confused by this question. What do you mean? Seeing me like this, my cousin's stern face turned into a teasing smile and said to me, one of the characteristics of a fake person is that before the flaw is discovered, a small number of people will be able to detect it and feel fear towards the fake person. But there must be a source of fear. Since the fake man has not been found to have any flaws, why would humans be afraid? I became even more curious. My cousin put the books on the table. She suddenly stopped talking and just stared at me blankly, with an expressionless look on her face again. Sister, why are you looking at me? I felt a little awkward seeing her like this. She tilted her head slightly, smiled, and said, why do you think that the person who came to your house today is your real cousin? Buzz. I instantly felt my scalp tighten. You are kidding again. I tried my best not to look so embarrassed, because I thought she would still be happy about scaring me like she was just now. But after a few seconds, I felt that something was wrong. My cousin was still staring at me coldly and strangely. This was totally different from her usual personality. I couldn't say anything. My body was tense, and I just wanted to escape from this room. At this moment, my cousin seemed to be possessed by some unknown species, or like a mental patient. Her personality had been disguised for more than 20 years and was truly exposed at this moment. With a bang, she stood up and moved her face closer to me. Hello. I was startled by the sudden situation, and my whole body shuddered. Her face got closer and closer to me, and then she giggled. Silly brother, you were scared by me again. She turned around and sat back in her chair, her expression returning to the familiar one I had before, with a cunning look as if she had succeeded in her conspiracy. Huh. I let out a long breath, threw the pillow over and shouted, Ava, are you sick? Ha 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 ha. My cousin was even more proud when she saw me like this. Just wait. I'll scare you someday, I said helplessly. My cousin put her computer into her backpack and said to me, I was just doing a little experiment and also answering your question. What's the problem? You asked me why humans are inexplicably afraid of fake people. I think the experiment just now can explain it a little bit. I thought back to her look a minute ago and suddenly realized, I see, you mean a very familiar person suddenly becomes strange and weird, then this is also kind of Uncanny Valley, right? That's right. My cousin snapped her fingers. Suppose I was a fake person and you didn't see my flaws, but you were still scared just now because my abnormality caused you to feel unknown, so you felt fear. I couldn't help but nod, agreeing with what he said. So, how do you plan to write the story of the ape man and the pseudo-man? My cousin put on her bag and sighed. Not yet. I need to think carefully about what the fake person-esque flaw is. Well, I hope you can come up with a brilliant loophole. Be sure to tell me as soon as possible. Let's talk about it later. My cousin waved her hand nonchalantly and walked out of the room. The door unlocked, and she took a step forward before suddenly stopping and asking me quietly, "Daniel, do you remember a sentence in my novel just now?" "Which one?" My cousin said, without even turning her head. The hypocrite said that even God doesn't know it exists. So where did it come from? Bang. She closed the door tightly. I don't know why, it was noon, but I felt cold all over. I couldn't figure out what my cousin said at the end. 3 days later, this incident still loomed in my mind. I even resisted going to bed every night. I was afraid of dreaming about that group of apes and that fake man. When I opened my phone, I found that my cousin Ava's personal writing blog had been updated. It was the novel about the pseudo-person. Could it be that she has revealed the flaws of the fake person? I clicked on it excitedly and started browsing. After all, I was really curious about this secret. Here are her updates. When another tribe found the clever ape man, he had gone mad, was covered in mud, and had many wounds. It seemed that he had suffered a lot along the way. How could the apes of that time have the concept of madness? Seeing him like this, they thought he was possessed by an evil spirit. They tied him up, surrounded him in the crowd, and kept kowtowing and praying. "It's here. It's among us." The clever ape man couldn't stop roaring and shouting these words over and over again. This made people even more frightened, causing those around them to not dare to move forward. I'll tell you the secret about it. Hearing this, the leader of the tribe stood up and slowly walked to him. "Who is it? What secret do you want to tell me?" The clever ape man twisted his body, jumped up and down, and shouted, "A man has come to our tribe. No, he is not a human, although he looks the same as us." Before he could finish, the leader suddenly leaned forward and spoke to him face to face. "Look at me and think carefully about what to say." "You." The clever ape's pupils suddenly trembled, and his heart stopped beating as he looked at the approaching leader. At that time, the death of a person was a very normal thing. People didn't know why, so they just threw the ape man's body into the forest. Maybe there was something wrong with the leader. He was a fake human. Unfortunately, with the death of the smart ape man, no one knew about this anymore. 1 million years ago, there were still many animals on the earth. One day, a cheetah accidentally broke into a cave while chasing prey. Yes, it was the cave where the pseudo-man had stayed. The cheetah seemed to be very curious about this place and wandered around the cave. Please note, animals will avoid people because they can smell places where humans are active, but this leopard didn't feel that there were any people here. On the walls of the cave, there were piles of corpses of previous prey and some stone tools. The leopard felt something was wrong, and it used its inadequate brain to reason. There should be human activity here, but I didn't see or smell anyone. The leopard couldn't figure it out, so it decided to take the prey for itself. When it was about to enjoy it, a human face appeared out of nowhere. "Are you looking for me?" The story ends here. Obviously, my cousin has not finished writing it. There are still many plots to come. For example, is the face that appears in the cave a fake person? If it is a fake person, is he a guest staying overnight or the leader? Or are these two the same fake person? More importantly, where is the flaw of the fake person? I was not satisfied with just watching it, so I decided to analyze it myself. Walking into the study, I took out the book about the Uncanny Valley effect and started thinking while flipping through it. I have seen some videos about the Uncanny Valley before. Most of them were robots or dolls, or humans deliberately making weird appearances. However, these flaws are huge and can be seen at a glance. But my cousin's novel clearly states that pseudo-humans appear no different from humans, which is strange. Pseudo-humans look no different from humans, so they are humans. I couldn't help but complain to myself. My cousin's story seemed like a difficult problem. Who could have guessed it? But this only aroused my curiosity more and more. I was already interested in these suspenseful and horror stories or legends, Otherwise, my cousin would not have come to me a few days ago to discuss them. There are no two leaves in the world that are exactly the same. There must be differences between pseudo-humans and humans. I have decided that I must figure out the flaw before my cousin finishes writing and tell her as soon as possible so that we can compete to see whose idea is better. The next moment, I stood up and took something from the bookshelf, the nesting doll that my friend had given me. Products like nesting dolls are mass-produced on industrial lines, which means that apart from size, there is almost no difference between them. I took out 2 nesting dolls of similar size, placed them on the table, put my face close to them, and looked left and right. If the identities of these 2 nesting dolls are now one is a human and the other is a pseudo-human, and they look the same, then where is the so-called flaw? I stared at them for a long time without figuring out where to start. I held them in my hands, examined them from top to bottom, and finally had no choice but to accept it. There was really no difference between the 2 dolls except for their size. The 2 dolls always had smiles on their faces, and now it seemed as if they were laughing at me. I was a little angry and threw the dolls aside. Even apes living millions of years ago could see the flaw, so this shouldn't be difficult. I just don't believe it. I can't figure it out. It suddenly occurred to me that since that clever ape man could see the flaw twice, the flaw must be visible to the naked eye. I pulled out my phone and checked my cousin's novel again. I read it again because I felt there must be some clues in the current story. Soon, I discovered a clue. The first time the ape man recognized the fake human was in a dream. In a dream? Logically speaking, this is impossible, because the faces of people in dreams are blurry. Even if they are clear, they can't be as clear as in reality. Moreover, the ape man and the pseudo-man were meeting for the first time and did not have very familiar memories of their appearance. Yes, this is a suspicious point, I said excitedly. This plot shows that the ape man did not recognize the fake man through careful observation or other methods, but through intuition and speculation, the flaws of the fake person were discovered. Moreover, when the ape man saw the strange leader again, he quickly discovered the flaw and was frightened to death. Maybe I was wrong from the beginning. I can't tell by appearance. I nodded with satisfaction. My reasoning should be correct. Appearance is just a decoy. The special thing about the fake person lies somewhere else. I read the story carefully again, and finally, I discovered the following points. Taking out a pen and paper from the drawer, I carefully recorded the clues I had deduced. The first point, pseudo-humans are not different from humans in appearance. At least, there are no flaws to be seen from the outside. The second point, the pseudo-people say that even God doesn't know of its existence. So there are 2 speculations. Either it comes from a very distant place, such as outside the universe. Either it is a native species, but it is hiding it from all living things on Earth. The third point, the cheetah did not detect any human scent in the cave, so it is speculated that the pseudo-human does not have the physiological smell of humans. Of course, this assumption is only temporary and has not been confirmed. I stayed in the study for the entire morning, trying to find a way to exploit the fake person. Since there are no flaws on the outside, I will start from other places. The origin of the pseudo-human, designed to be an alien? No, it's a bit inconsistent. The internal structure of a pseudo-human is different from that of a human, but apes can't see through eyes, so how can they tell? So this one won't work either. He wrote several plans in succession, but I rejected them all one after another. As I was worrying about it, I suddenly had an idea and realized that it was useless to take notes and think about it by myself. I couldn't see anything facing 2 lifeless dolls. Why not go out and see the real people on the street? Maybe we'll get some inspiration. I put on my coat, went out, and took a taxi to the amusement park, which is the largest entertainment venue in the city. It not only includes parks and zoos, but also some science and education museums and exhibition halls. In short, It covers a large area and has a large flow of people. Today is a weekend afternoon, and there are more tourists than usual. A huge Ferris wheel stands in the middle of the venue. Below the Ferris wheel, there are hundreds of people, both tourists and vendors, and it is very lively. This is a really good place for people watching. I finally found a bench to sit down on and scan the crowd. In the front left, there is a man dressed as a clown selling balloons. His makeup is very exaggerated, but the children around him are not afraid at all. They are jumping and laughing and hitting the balloons. I shook my head. The Joker's appearance was too exaggerated to be anything like a pseudo-human. In the front right, a middle-aged woman has a cold and numb expression on her face. It seems that her neck is a little stiff and it is difficult for her to turn it. My eyes were drawn to her, and I thought, this is quite interesting. Then I laughed at myself and said that she might just be in a bad mood recently and had a stiff neck. As I was watching, a voice came from the bench. "Hello, would you like a fortune teller?" I looked in the direction of the sound and saw a young girl with double buns and a long black skirt. She was very cute. There was a table in front of her with some cards on it that I couldn't understand, and she was looking at me expectantly. I said with a smile, "Thank you, I don't need it. I came here today to seek inspiration from the pseudo-man. Divination can't help me." The girl in the black skirt said to me, "Give it a try. I'm very good at fortune-telling. Whether it's about love, career, or supernatural phenomena, I can tell the future." I looked at her and said, "I want to find someone who... people who are like humans, but different." I thought she would think I was stupid after I said this, but who would have thought she would actually think about it seriously? Then she asked me with confusion, "Same as humans?" "What kind of similarity?" I said. "They look the same." She covered her mouth and chuckled, saying, "How is that possible? Even if they are twins, they are not exactly the same." Crash. At this moment, the willow tree above my head was blown by a gust of wind, and 2 leaves fell off and floated in front of my eyes. My heartstrings trembled suddenly. I grabbed the 2 leaves in an instant. "What did you just say?" I said. "There can't be 2 people in the world who are exactly the same." "That's it." In the dimness, I seemed to sense some important clues. "How much do you charge for a divination?" The girl held up 2 fingers. 21. "It's not expensive." I took out $20 and put them on the table. The girl was surprised and said, "I haven't done the divination yet." "It doesn't matter. Thank you." I turned around and waved my hands. The sentence just now was very important to me. I seemed to have thought of something, but I couldn't explain it at the moment. I wanted to go home now and summarize the clues again. As soon as I walked out of the playground, the phone rang. It was my father calling. "What's wrong, Dad?" On the other end of the phone, my father cried and said sadly, "Daniel, your cousin Ava, she passed away today. The hospital said it was due to heart problems." My head exploded with a bang, and the next second I ran outside frantically to stop a car. My cousin just died like this. It must be wrong. When I arrived upstairs at my cousin's house, panting, the body had already been moved away. My uncle and aunt were crying and almost fainted. Relatives comforted them. I held back my grief and stood at the door of my cousin's room. She had happily discussed novels with me a few days ago. How could this happen? The doctor said it was a heart attack, but as far as I know, my cousin has never been to the hospital for heart problems in more than 20 years. Because my cousin's death was so strange, the whole afternoon relatives, police, and doctors filled the room. I looked at everyone silently. Suddenly, my heart tightened, as if someone had caught me, and a feeling of fear came over me. What's going on? Feeling my heart beating at an accelerated rate, my mind was in a mess. Why did I suddenly feel such a strong sense of fear? I thought back to what happened just now. The fear suddenly came over me after I took a look at someone in the crowd. Who was it? Who did I just see by chance? What did I see? My breathing became more and more rapid. My cousin couldn't have died of a heart attack, so what would cause heart problems? Boom. My heart suddenly jumped. I remembered that clever ape man who saw the leader disguised as a fake human before he died, and then his heart stopped. Did my cousin see something too? How is this possible? The fake person is clearly just a fiction created by my cousin. But what on earth did I see just now? Why did I feel such a strong fear? I can't remember it anymore, and my heart is in turmoil. But I have a guess. If the pseudo-man really exists, then it must be in this room at this moment. It has been 3 days since my cousin died. No one has been able to find out anything about the cause of death. But the autopsy also showed that my cousin's heart was healthy before. Normally, if there are doubts in a death, it should be handed over to the police for handling. But the superstitious aunt insisted on burying the girl as soon as possible, and she even had a quarrel with the relatives over this. In 4 days, it will be my cousin's funeral. These past few days, I have been thinking about how good she has been to me since I was a child, while analyzing all the clues of the fake person. If the murder of my cousin is related to the fake person, I will find it no matter where I am. I was lying on the bed and thinking about it when my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed that it was an unfamiliar number. I thought about it and clicked to answer it. "Hello, Daniel. This is your sister Ava." It was actually my cousin's voice on the other end. I almost stopped breathing and almost dropped the phone. "Daniel, I'm afraid I'll be dead by the time you hear this recorded message. After much thought, I've decided to tell you the secret." Just as I was wondering what the secret was, my cousin said, "Fake people really exist. I wrote the story of the fake man not for nothing, Daniel. I suspect I have seen the fake man before. Remember the wise ape in my story? He is more like a substitute for myself, because when I was a child, I really saw human faces that I shouldn't have seen. On my 8th birthday, your family came to celebrate my birthday. While you were eating in the living room, I went to the study to look for toys. There was a balcony next to it, and at that moment, I saw a face passing by the balcony. Unfortunately, I can't remember it at all, but I'm sure that face was very familiar, but also very scary. I was so scared that I screamed, and the adults rushed over to see me. When I heard this, I remembered that it seemed to be true. It was my cousin's birthday, and we went out to dinner, but it has been so many years, and I have forgotten all the details. But what does this have to do with fake people? I continued to listen. "Daniel, ever since the birthday party, I have always felt that the scary face has been following me, because I often have a feeling of heart palpitations. I have even become a little suspicious, looking at everyone and looking at something wrong. But everyone's appearance, it's all normal. All of this got better after I went to college. I thought it was because I went to other places, so my mentality was different, but recently that fear came back. It started when I returned home. Daniel, don't be afraid if I tell you something. I guess that scary thing may have been hidden in my house for many years." These words struck my mind like a thunderbolt. I took a casual look at her house that day, and it seemed that it was not an illusion. I also saw a fake person. Brother, I actually already have the answer, but I don't dare to believe it. I hope that one day my story can have an ending and the world can know the truth, but I don't want you to be involved. So I am very conflicted. Time is running out. It's coming soon. Listen to me. There are no two identical leaves in the world. Remember this. Also, another characteristic of a pseudo-human is perhaps very light. Beep, beep. There was a busy tone on the other end of the phone, and then the call was hung up. These were all the clues my cousin gave me in the last moments of her life. My face was already filled with tears. My sister, who once loved me so much, was now killed by something of unknown origin. I know that she was very conflicted before she died. She was afraid that no one would know the secret, and she was also afraid that I would be implicated. But I didn't care. I had to do something. Wiping away my tears, I leaned quietly on the bed and thought for a long time. During dinner, I asked my father if he remembered my cousin's 8th birthday. My father obviously didn't remember it very clearly. He just said that it happened, and we just had a meal together. My father asked me, "Why did you suddenly think of this?" I said calmly, I was only 6 years old that year, so I don't remember some things clearly, so I'm asking you. By the way, I heard from my cousin that during dinner, she was alone in the study, and then she suddenly cried for no apparent reason. My father recalled carefully that happened. At that time, your uncle said, "You are already an 8-year-old kid, but you are still crying." I asked again, "Do you adults know why she was crying?" The father shook his head. "How would I know? Did my cousin say anything when she was crying?" The father sighed. What else can a child say? When I asked her why she was crying, she didn't answer and just kept calling for her mom. The next day, I went to my cousin's house again with my family. My parents were comforting my uncle and aunt in the living room, while I secretly went to the bathroom and took something away. After carefully putting the thing into my pocket, I went to my cousin's room again. The layout inside was the same as usual, with my cousin's computer on the desk and her college graduation photo next to it. I closed my eyes, simulated my cousin's feelings, and sat on the chair. If my guess was true, then she must have been in pain and helpless at that time. I went to the study again and looked out the window quietly. That year, the thing that flashed by here was a human face. That face scared my cousin and left her with an indelible shadow. I put my face close to the window and imagined the scene. That strange human face passed by the balcony and then came to my cousin's house. It had been hiding in the house all these years. I remembered the unintentional glance at my cousin's house that day. At that moment, I slowly raised my finger, pointed across the wall, and pointed at someone in the living room. If you guessed correctly, that fake person is you. Unfortunately, I still have one doubt about the flaw of the dummy, and there is still a lack of evidence. When I went out with my parents, I seemed a little lost. My parents just thought it was because my cousin and I had a good relationship and were too sad. But I knew in my heart that the reason for this was because the truth was too painful. I even suspected that my cousin had known who it was for a long time, but unfortunately, she didn't want to admit it. After all, my cousin has been much smarter than me since she was a child. I can guess it, so how could she not guess it? I gave the stolen things to the hospital for examination through friends. I also paid extra money in the hope that the examination results would be available as soon as possible. 2 days before the funeral, I locked myself in the study, logged into my cousin's writing blog, and continued writing the story of the ape-man and the pseudo-man bit by bit. I want this story to have an ending, and I want to make it public, so that even if the same thing happens in the world one day, it will not repeat my cousin's mistake. However, the story is still lacking a little bit, just a little flaw in the fake person. If my cousin were still alive, we would be able to analyze it together, but she is gone, and I can only try my best to recall all the fragments of my cousin's past. I took some time to go back to my hometown and brought back the family photo album. Every New Year, relatives would take a family photo together. I flipped through the photos one by one, selecting photos related to my cousin's family. The person in the photo looks like a human. I really want to know if this fake person showed any flaws when my cousin was 8 years old. There were fewer tourists under the huge Ferris wheel today. I still sat on the same bench as before, squinting my eyes and looking up at the sky. You're here again. The girl who was fortune-telling next to me changed into jeans today, and she seemed to have a deep impression of me. I still squinted my eyes and said, "Aren't you also here to tell fortunes every day? How's your business today?" The fortune-telling girl sighed. "Not much business." "By the way, did you find someone last time you were looking for someone?" I shook my head. "I think I found it." "Then why are you shaking your head?" The girl seemed a little confused. Seeing that I was only focused on basking in the sun, She continued to sit in front of the stall with boredom. After a while, the girl called me. "Hey, hello." I weakly asked, "What?" She said shyly, "Can you watch the stall for me for a minute? I need to go to the bathroom." "Go ahead." She thanked me, covered her stomach, and ran to the toilet nearby. I thought to myself, this stall probably doesn't need to be watched. No one would come here for divination. At this time, in front of my left, the clown who was selling balloons was replaced by an old man who was still selling balloons. At this moment, a child came to him, picked and chose, and bought a balloon that was not fully blown up. The old man puffed up his cheeks on the spot and blew up the balloon with all his strength. Soon, the balloon grew bigger and bigger. It was a balloon shaped like a monkey. After blowing it up, the old man tied the balloon up with a rope and handed it to the child. The monkey balloon floated in the air with the breeze. This scene made me stunned, and I always felt that it was somewhat familiar. Not long after, the girl who had gone to the toilet before came back to the stall. I turned my head to look, but what I saw gave me a shock. The person is still the same person, but the jeans have become a long-sleeved shirt, and the bun has become a ponytail. You change clothes so quickly." I looked in disbelief. "What?" She looked at me with a puzzled look, as if she didn't know me. "Didn't you go to the bathroom? It's only been less than a minute, and you—" She suddenly smiled and said, "I see. You mistook me for my sister." A few minutes later, the mystery was solved. It turned out that the fortune teller had a twin sister. She pointed at her sister and said to me, "Look, don't we look alike?" I nodded. "Indeed, many people must have mistaken you two for each other." She pointed at her clothes again and said, "So we both dress differently. Since God gave us the same skin, then adding another layer of skin outside of that skin would make us different. Add another layer of skin outside the skin?" My eyes suddenly lit up, and I recalled the content of my cousin's phone call again. It turned out that what she said was weird. I'm afraid that's not what she meant. I took out another 20 yuan and put it on her table, then left with a smile. Hey, why are you giving me another 20? She asked me in confusion. I said aloud, "Your words are very mysterious. Perhaps you are really a very good fortune teller." When I got home, I took out the nesting dolls again and took out the dolls layer by layer. In the evening, I wrote everything on my blog and chose to publish it at a scheduled time, which would be tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow is also my cousin's funeral. The funeral was shrouded in a desolate white, and the crying had not stopped since morning. Everyone was mourning that a girl in her prime had passed away like this. I stood at the door of the auditorium, waiting for something. A car was approaching in the distance. I recognized it as my friend's car and walked towards it quickly. My friend got out of the car and took out a folder and shouted to me, "Daniel, you are so idle, aren't you? Why are you giving me a wig to test?" I said with a half smile, "Wig." My friend scratched his head and said, "It's not really a wig, but the test showed that it's not even human hair. The DNA and all that stuff is a mess, and the researchers there even asked me where I got it from." I didn't answer him and stared at the folder in a daze. Seeing me in a daze, my friend impatiently said, "Here are the results. You can see for yourself. I have something else to do, so I'll leave now." After saying that, he handed the folder to me and drove away. The weather turned cooler today. A cold wind blew, bringing 2 leaves that fell at my feet. Is this God's will? God finally discovered them. I hid the folder carefully somewhere and walked towards the morning hall. It's time to take action. I looked at that person coldly, watching him cry and wipe his tears, watching him perform to his heart's content. I stared at its face. Just when it moved too much, I caught it. There really are no 2 identical leaves in the world, and 2 identical people actually live as one person. I ran over, took out the dagger, and stabbed my aunt in the heart. My aunt looked at me in disbelief. Everyone else was also shocked by my behavior. "Daniel, you are crazy." The relatives surrounded him angrily. I yelled, "She's not human. Look carefully. There's another person inside her." My aunt smiled strangely and fell to the ground. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My story should have been published long ago. It was as follows. 1 million years ago, a smart ape-man followed his tribe out hunting. During the hunting, he found a dead body. A child asked the smart ape-man, "Why is this person on the ground not moving?" The ape-man replied, "Dead." The child asked, "What does it mean to die?" In fact, the ape-man didn't know what death meant. He heard from the previous generation that when dead, one could do nothing. No one cared about the body. After a day of hunting, the tribe returned to the cave to rest. That night, a passerby came. That's right, it was that fake man. The clever ape-man felt something was wrong as soon as it came in, but he couldn't describe it. In the dream, the two met again. When they were close to each other, the pseudo-man suddenly had another person walk out of his body. It turned out that this was not one person, but two people. The person outside was the one who was staying overnight, while the person inside was the one who made the ape-man feel, for the first time, what it meant to be beyond comprehension and fear. The person inside was the corpse I saw on the roadside during the day. How could a corpse come alive? Where did the outer layer of skin come from? The clever ape-man racked his brains but couldn't figure it out, so he ran out frantically. Was he dead? Yes, after running to another tribe, he was scared to death by the fake leader, because he found that there was something under the leader's skin. This meant that they were of the same kind. A few days later, a cheetah ran to the cave, and in the cave, the cheetah met a man. The person in the cave was the smart ape who died a few days ago. He is alive again. No, he is just a shell now. The reason why humans and pseudo-humans look the same is because they are made of the same skin. But in this world, there are no two leaves that are exactly the same. So one must be a human, and the other, a fake human skin. The fear caused by the inconsistency between the inside and the outside has become the Uncanny Valley effect from ancient times to the present. I was imprisoned, and even though I had killed someone myself, the verdict was delayed because there was something wrong with my aunt's body. She was not human. I confessed everything, including the secrets about the fake person, which caused a great shock in society. Many people said that they had also encountered such incidents. That day, a reporter came in to interview me. I recognized her. Her name was Luna. She was a nice person. Throughout her interview career, every report she made was truthful. She was very interested in this. So after I told her the story of the ape-man and the pseudo-man, I told her another short story. In modern society, a little girl is celebrating her 8th birthday. While the adults are eating in the living room, she goes to the study alone and looks outside. At this moment, a skin flashed by like a balloon. The girl recognized it at that moment. It was her mother. She was so scared that she burst into tears. The adults came over after hearing the noise, but the strong sense of fear had already made the little girl want to protect herself. The next moment, she couldn't think of anything and could only shout subconsciously, "Mom, Mom."